All right. So, hi guys, welcome to the Karen Chain Show. So today we have a very special guest. He is one of my connections on LinkedIn. So please welcome Jason Barnard. Hi, Jason. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you very much. It's delightful to be here, Karen.
Yes, I'm so pleased to have you on the show. Okay, so Jason Barnard is the founder and CEO of CaliQ. Am I right? Am I pronouncing it right? Okay. So
Yep, Kelly Cube.
Yeah. Okay. So he is a digital marketing consultant who specializes in brand SERPs and knowledge panels. He is also known as the Brand SERP Guy, right? So, Jason, can you tell us more about you and what you do?
Yeah, well, I named myself the Brand SERP Guy because it's a really nice way to get people to start thinking about brand SERP. So brand SERP is the search engine results page for a brand. It's what appears when your audience Googles your brand name or your personal name. And in the digital marketing space, that's quite an original specialization. I don't know anybody else who's actually looking at this in quite so much detail. So I call myself the Brand SERP Guy because it's a good way to get people talking about something they're not currently talking about very much. And my mission for 2021 is to get everybody talking about brand SERPs, what appears when somebody Googles your brand name, and knowledge panels, which is Google's understanding of who you are and what you do. And those for me are the two most exciting and fun things in digital marketing today.
Yes, it is. I was actually like Googling brand SERPs and wow, it's your name. It's only the top search Google. Wow. So that means you're really, wow.
Well, it's a bit of a cheat. I'm number one for everything because I'm the only person actually talking about it. So it's really easy to rank number one when you're the only person. So let's hope that I'm still number one in a couple of years when everybody's talking about it.
Yes, absolutely. So first things first, what do we mean when we talk about brand SERPs?
Right. Well, I'll come to the little story. In fact, it all started because I would go in and pitch to clients, and I would have the meeting, and I would be going, "Yes, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. This is going to be amazing. We're going to have this great digital strategy." And they said, "Yes, we're buying in. We're ready to take you on, Jason. You will be our digital marketing guru." And then I'd walk out of the room, and 50% of the time, I didn't sign the contract. Because the people weren't convinced. And I realized after a while, the reason they weren't convinced was because when I left the room, they searched my name. And what came up for my name was my role as a blue dog in a cartoon. I was a blue dog in a cartoon series on ITV in the UK. And it was quite a famous cartoon at the time. And so what came up was they would look at it and they would say, but this guy's a cartoon blue dog. Why would we work with a cartoon blue dog on our digital marketing strategy? And so I then thought, right, well, what I need to make sure is that what comes up when they search my name is my digital marketing credentials and not the blue dog credentials. So I set about making sure that when you search my name, and if you search it now, you'll see it's all about digital marketing on the left-hand side on desktop. And my story as a blue dog is still there because your brand SERP does tell your story, but it's very much smaller. And then what happened is that people would Google my brand name after these meetings, my name, sorry, and they would see SEMrush, they would see Search Engine Journal, they would see videos of me with Joost de Valk from Joost. Or Rand Fishkin, all these big names in digital marketing. They would say, okay, he's associated with Rand Fishkin, Joost de Valk, Aleda Solis, Search Engine Journal, Search Engine Land, SEMrush. He must know what he's talking about. And instead of signing 50% of the contracts, I started signing 80% of the contracts. And better still, nobody ever argued about my prices anymore. So a brand SERP is actually incredibly important as it's the people who are searching your brand name or your personal name are searching you because they're about to enter into a relationship with you, do business with you, or they're going to visit your site, or they're researching you. And all of these people, I like to call them A-list.
A-list, okay.
The A-list people for your business or for yourself. They're the people who are most important to you. And what they see on Google is incredibly important to your future relationship with them.
Sure, that is why it's really important. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm very convincing about this because I've
Yeah.
been doing this for 7 years and thinking about
Wow.
it for 7 years. And what's interesting as well is it seems like such a simple concept, and it seems like such a simple, something you can do in a couple of months. I thought I'll do this in 2 months and then I'll have finished and I can go and do something else. And
Mm,
7 years later, every single day, I only do this. This is all I do. Brand SERPs knowledge panels.
mm.
Every single day I learn something new.
Oh, that is awesome. Okay, so why do you think that brand SERPs are really helpful, especially in building your own personal brand? So that's what I really want to know. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, your personal brand, I think kind of people
Mm,
overlook how important that is, because if I'm talking to you
mm,
about, something we might be working together on, or
mm,
I want you to follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, it's great to get you engaged on LinkedIn or Twitter,
mm,
but that's a very superficial relationship. If I
mm,
want to build a deeper, better relationship with you, I
mm,
need to get you to the point where you're actually searching Google for me.
mm,
And if you search Google for me, that means you have an intention to actually move forwards with some kind of deeper relationship, a working relationship, buying something from me,
mm,
becoming a client, or asking me to write an article, or collaborating on this show, for example.
mm,
You will have Googled my name to find out more about me. And the
mm.
interesting thing is that what Google shows about me, instinctively as human beings today now, we trust what Google says. If Google
Yes. Mm,
shows a page of results about me, you think, A, it's probably true, B, it's
mm,
probably accurate, and C, it's probably fair.
mm,
So you've got that idea of saying it's actually a fair assessment of who I am and what I do. And if
mm,
it's great and if it does represent me, I'm winning. And if it's
mm.
bad or doesn't represent me, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose that
Yeah.
relationship, or I potentially lose that relationship. And I think kind of I like to say it needs to be positive, accurate, and convincing.
Positive, accurate, and convincing. All right. Okay. Now I learned something new. Okay. So, why does Google is gonna be our new business card, and what that means for us?
Yeah, well, that idea of business card, I actually started saying that because it's a
Mm,
really easy way for people to visualize what I'm talking about.
mm,
The example of me going to see my clients, I actually had printed business cards,
mm,
and I got a graphic designer to design my business card, and it looked really good. So I
mm,
would give the business card and I would think, yeah, that represents me and it makes me look good to my potential client,
mm,
which is great.
mm,
But actually, that business card no longer meant anything as soon as they'd search my name. My business card became Google. So
mm,
I now consider that designing, in inverted commas, my business card on Google is as
mm,
important, if not more so, than the actual business card I would hand to somebody, especially in
mm.
this period at the moment with the COVID, where
Yeah.
people aren't meeting quite so much face to face. So Google becomes even more important as that business card.
Mm,
And if you're in local business, really quickly, you can take
mm.
that further. Google's your homepage.
Yes.
For local businesses, people often don't even visit your site. They will just take what Google tells them and
Yeah.
either visit your company, visit your offices, ring you up,
Mm,
ask a question. You can do all of that from the Google SERP. And for individuals, especially if you don't have your own personal website,
mm,
Google is representing you. That is your homepage.
mm.
So business card, homepage, doesn't really matter which way you look at it. If you think about it as a business card, then it's already important. If you think about it as your homepage, it's the most important thing on the web for you.
Mm, all right. Now I know why it's important. Okay. So I would like to talk a little bit about SEO because
Mm-hmm.
it's also I know it's also related for brand serves, right? So I'd like to know more about your approach to SEO because I've watched your video that Google is only looking for three things, right?
Yes.
So understanding, credibility, and deliverability. So can you tell us more about it?
Yes, you know more about this than I do, I think.
Yeah.
Um, quickly, just
Mm,
brand SERPs. In fact, I come from the world of
mm,
SEO. I was a blue dog, then I was an SEO, then I was a
mm,
digital marketer, now I'm the brand SERP guy.
mm,
And managing your brand SERP is all about very low-level, simple SEO. So anybody can do it. You really don't need to know very much about SEO to do it. But everything you do to manage your brand SERP is good
mm,
quality SEO work and will help your overall SEO strategy. So that's just a quick aside. But SEO, what struck me a couple of years ago was how complicated it gets very quickly. You don't know what it is you're trying to do. Why do you want to make your site faster? Why do you want to have a site map? Why do you want a content strategy? Why do you want a social media strategy? Why do you need reviews? It's all kind of these fragmented elements that never seem to come together in any kind of particular form. And I was thinking, how can we think about this so that everything we do contributes to a whole? And that idea then moved on to saying, let's have empathy for Google. And I think empathy is an incredibly important part of how we approach life anyway. And it's understanding the problems that the person or the entity or Google is faced with. And Google's three problems, as you rightly said, are understanding, credibility, and deliverability. Now, what do I mean there? I mean, it needs to understand who you are and what you do.
Okay.
What Google is doing is offering solutions to its users' problems or answers to their questions. That's all Google does. And it's trying to do it as efficiently and as effectively as possible. Those people are Google's users, so it really wants to make sure that it gives them the best answer to their question or the best solution to their problem. Now, if it is to consider me or my solutions or my offers or my pages or my content as a potential solution or answer to its users' questions, it needs to understand who I am and what I'm offering and who my audience would be. So that's the understanding aspect. And then the credibility. If it's understood two different answers, it's going to choose the one that is provided by the company or the person who is the most credible in its eyes. So it's looking for that. I mean, in SEO, everybody calls it EAT, expertise, authority, and trust. I call it credibility. And the third is to say, okay, now we've understood what it is you're offering. It matches what my user's looking for. You are a better solution potentially, or you are a more credible solution than your competition. Now the question is, can you deliver? Can you deliver the content, if it's content? Can you deliver the products, if it's products? Will Google's users, Google's clients, be satisfied with the solution that you provide them with? That's the third aspect. And that's all Google cares about. And so everything you do in SEO, everything you do in, I like to say what we're doing is packaging our content for Google. So you take your content, which should be valuable to a user anyway, that should be a given. And then you package it for Google and you present it to Google. And when you present it to Google, you need to present it to Google in a way that it can understand what you're offering. It can understand that you are credible and that your content is credible. And number three is that you can deliver the content. The content delivers the goods to its users. And never, ever forget that the people who come from Google to your site are Google's users. They're your audience. Your audience is simply a subset of Google's users. But they're always Google's users. And obviously, I think that's important to say as well. You have Google's users, my audience crosses with their users, and I'm only looking to attract the part of Google's users that are my audience. And then my audience also expands beyond Google onto things like LinkedIn or Amazon or Microsoft or Apple or Twitter, all these other platforms. My audience could potentially be over there. So it's not just Google.
Wow. Now I know. So awesome. Okay. So why are brand SERPs so incredibly important, especially in the part of your sales funnel?
Well, they're incredibly important at the bottom of the sales funnel in particular, because people have found out about you. I talked to a guy called Barnaby Winter who was saying when people come to your website, they're 57% decided to buy from you already. They already know what you're offering by the time they come to your website. So a lot of us re-explain everything we do on our website. It's actually not necessary, because it's very unlikely somebody will come to your website without knowing anything about you or your offers. And when they've got to the point where they're searching your brand name, it means they're actively trying to get to your website or actively trying to enter into contact with you in local business by phoning you up, for example. And that means they're ready to convert. These people are your prospects who are on the cusp of converting. So if your brand SERP guides them to your site and that step just before your site is incredibly positive, accurate, and convincing,
Mm.
then you're much more likely to make that sale. And my example from earlier on was, instead of converting 50%, I converted 80%. Nobody argued about my prices anymore. So I was basically reassuring the people at the bottom of my sales funnel through Google's approval, because it was
Yes.
showing me in this positive and accurate and convincing light.
Mm.
But a second one that people often forget about is people we're already working with. In the case of personal brands, the number of times people I already work with will search my name to come to my site for a piece of information is surprisingly high. And for a company, it's even more. We navigate to websites using the brand name. So it's a navigational tool. So if an existing client with a brand will potentially see that brand SERP multiple times per day. And I had a very interesting experience recently with my podcast, because my podcast I have an event called CaddyCube Tuesdays. And as the name implies, it's always on a Tuesday. So I had one yesterday and it was great, lovely, wonderful. And what started to happen is that searches on my name, Jason Barnard, and my company, CaddyCube, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and then back down again. There's an enormous peak in searches on my name and my company brand name on Mondays and Tuesdays because of this event. So you can drive enormous amounts of search around your own name or your brand name by associating yourself with a regular event, for example. I mean, that's just one example of something I found very interesting. And I was talking to a client earlier on. I mean, this is slightly unrelated, but it is related at the same time. I had a client who sells flowers in France. And they're competing, obviously, with Interflora, who are the big company, who rank #1 absolutely everywhere because they're such a big company. My client was ranking #2. And just before Mother's Day, they advertised on the TV for the whole week before Mother's Day. And for that entire week, they went up to #1 for every single flower-related search.
Wow.
Above Interflora. As soon as they stopped advertising, they dropped down. And my bet, and I don't have any proof, but my bet is that the fact that they ranked #1 for that period of time was because of the brand search volume.
That's interesting.
It's stunning, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, amazing.
Well,
Okay.
I'm about to run another experiment with another client. It's not an experiment. Another client of mine who's going to start a TV campaign from later this year. And part of this is to see if that will be true. We'll get lots more people coming to the site through brand searches, which will encourage Google to think that we are relatively important. And that Mother's Day example, we were very important during that period of time. So, John Mueller from Google was talking at the beginning of this year and end of last year, saying, as brands and personal brands, we should be looking to increase the number of what he calls pull queries. That's brand queries. He's saying that if we want to progress in a general SEO sense, the number of pull queries, brand queries, the number of brand searches is very important. He didn't say that it affects the ranking, but he wasn't very far away from saying it.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. All right. So, why do you think that tracking your brand name is crucial for your success?
Well, if you don't track it, you don't know what people are seeing. If you just kind of open up a browser and search your own name or your own brand name in Chrome, you will get personalized results, first of all.
Okay.
Second of all, you will get geolocated results. So you will get results for wherever you happen to be. And third of all, you'll get desktop results if you're on a desktop, or mobile results if you're on a mobile phone. Now, especially for people, this is phenomenally important. #1, personalization aspect. You need to open an incognito window at least to start searching your name to see what's coming up. But then you need to also start thinking, well, if I'm in the Philippines, for example, what appears? If I'm in France, what appears? If I'm in the UK, what appears? And it's very, very, very different. You would be surprised how different it is. Now, for brands, it tends to be relatively stable, but for people, because people's names are by nature ambiguous, they differ vastly. Because what Google shows on the brand SERP is both to do with the name, its understanding of the entity behind that name. In my case, I'm an entity, Jason Barnard. There's another Jason Barnard in South Africa who's a footballer. He's a different entity. And if you want to know more about entities, look me up. I've done lots of talks about it, written loads of articles about it. You can learn more about that. It's really, really, really interesting stuff. But the fact is that the results in the UK are determined by the probability that the person is searching for me or a different Jason Barnard. Now, in the UK, there's a podcaster who has a music podcast who is called Jason Barnard. So in the UK, he gets a place on the SERP. He gets one place. In France, I get the whole thing. In South Africa, the footballer gets one place. In San Francisco, there's a professor at the Golden Gate University. He gets 2 places. So my brand SERP is not the same in different locations. It varies from town to town. And that is to do with the probability that somebody is actually looking for me. And the probability that they're looking for me is slightly less in South Africa because of this famous footballer. And it's slightly less in the UK because of the famous podcaster. And slightly less in San Francisco because of this professor. But in New York, there isn't anybody called Jason Barnard who's probabilistically likely to appear. There are probably Jason Barnards there, but Google hasn't understood who they are, so I get the whole brand SERP. So from a personal point of view and a brand point of view, tracking it across the world, if you're interested in that, obviously is very important. Now, what I've done with Kalicube is develop a tool that does this automatically. So every single month, it pulls up the brand SERP and it stores it in a database, which means you can see over time how things are changing across different countries. And it also tracks your presence in Google's knowledge graph. Google's knowledge graph is basically the equivalent of Wikipedia, but for a machine. So Wikipedia is an encyclopedia for human beings. Google's knowledge graph is an encyclopedia that the machine can read and use natively. And what it does is every time it's coming up with a result that it's showing us on the SERPs, it's looking at an encyclopedia and saying, do I recognize any of the entities, any of the things, any of the people, any of the films, any of the companies? And if I don't, I have to guess. But if I do, I can give a result that's much more close to the truth or the much qualitatively better result. So if you're in that Google encyclopedia, any result around your brand and any result that your brand participates in, so that's your wider SEO strategy, is going to be much, much better.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So tracking all of this, sorry, to take, in fact, tracking, measuring, because Kalicube tracks it, it measures it, it says this is good, this is bad. And then it gives a series of improvements, which is the part I'm currently building, which is step by step, how do I improve what appears? How do I make what appears positive, accurate, and convincing, and a very good representation of who I am, what I do, and who my audience is?
I want to check out that.
If you want to sign up, there's a beta I've just opened up. It's at kalicube.pro/signup, SIGNUP. Kalicube.pro is KALICUBE.pro/SIGNUP. And what you do is you enter your brand name and your brand website. The Kalicube system will then track it. I'm tracking 77,000 brands.
Oh, wow.
So I have a big database of information that I use to understand. So I'm not just kind of testing on myself. I've got 500 experiments that I'm working on myself. I've got 77,000 brands tracked in this database. So I have a phenomenal amount of information on which I can base the advice that I'm giving people. So it's data-backed advice to help you to improve what people see when they Google your name or your brand name.
Yay, awesome. I'm going to sign up.
Brilliant, wonderful.
Okay. Okay, so why do brand SERPs matter to businesses?
Well, I think one of the hardest things with Brand SERP is to prove direct monetary value, because you can't actually link the fact that people have converted because they happen to have seen something great on your Brand SERP as they came through to your site at that last critical step of the conversion process. It's very difficult to prove that the Brand SERP actually had any effect on that. So in terms of convincing your boss or even convincing yourself that it's worth investing time and money, it's partly a leap of faith, but also partly, I like to say, would I want to work with a business or a person who had this Brand SERP? And the answer is probably not. The fact is, if you look up on Google, if you search on Google for your own name or for your brand name, it's not going to be perfect. It could always be better. And if it is better, if it is perfect, look up my name, look up Jason Barnard, and you will think he's an expert in digital marketing. Look up another digital marketer, and you know they're an expert in digital marketing, but you won't necessarily get that same message from Google. So I would argue that although I'm not necessarily a better digital marketer than the other ones, Google certainly makes me look like one. And that's definitely worth the investment.
It is indeed a worthy investment. Okay.
Well, especially from a personal branding point of view, I think a lot of podcasters fail to realize, I mean, I talk to YouTubers and podcasters, musicians too, they don't really think about it. They think, for a YouTuber would say, well, I spend my whole life on YouTube. And you say, well, what appears on YouTube when somebody searches your name? And they've got no idea. And that's their platform. And then you say to them, well, what about Google? And they say, well, I don't care about Google. And you say, well, look at the volume of searches on your name on Google. And they come back to me and say, oh, yes, there's quite a lot, isn't there? And that's a missed opportunity of, you know, making that extra touch point that is a brand search, making it as positive and as convincing as possible. Because, you know, we all talk about the 7 touch points. With 7 touch points, we can potentially develop a relationship with somebody in terms of business. Google Brand SERPs is one of those touch points. And it's one of those touch points pretty much systematically. Everybody who matters to you or your business, with whom you're going to develop some kind of business relationship, is going to Google your brand name at some point or another in their journey. So it has to be one of the 7 touch points. I don't know if it's 7, it might be 10, it might be 20. Depends on the industry. I mean, we all use the number 7, but it's obviously variable. But it is one of those touch points. It is almost systematically one of those touch points. You cannot afford to not make it perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm gonna start optimizing my own brand. And speaking of optimizing, sure.
No, I was just going to say one thing is that I get accused of doing vanity searches. People say, oh, you search your brand name all the time, your own name all the time. That's vanity. And I would beg to differ. I mean, yes, if I was just searching my own name because I like to look at myself, that would be vanity. It's like brushing your hair in the mirror for hours and hours and hours and hours and trying to, thinking how beautiful you look, being Rapunzel with her beautiful hair, for example. But here what we're doing is saying this is actually a business question. It's a leveraging my brand identity, Google's representation of my brand identity, leveraging it to its best advantage for my business needs. So it's not a vanity metric. It's not a vanity occupation. It's a fundamentally necessary occupation for any brand or personal brand.
It is indeed. Okay. Yeah.
I just thought of that. That's great, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I love that term, vanity. Okay. So how are we going to optimize our own brand SERP?
Well, I divide it into 3 types of page. One is the type of the pages you control. So that will be your own website, your company website. You can change the content of the entire website and specifically the page that is ranking for your brand name. And then you've got content that you semi-control. That will be social profiles or Crunchbase profiles where you can change the information on the page, but you do not own the site. So the site could potentially change the entire page at any time. You have no control over the details of the website, but you do have control over the specific page we're talking about. Thirdly, you have no control Actually, there are four, because the third one is into two. It's indirect control and no control. Indirect control would be your site. I could contact you because I know you. And if you wrote something and it ranked on my personal brand SERP, I could contact you and say, could you possibly change this? And the probability is that you would, because we already have a relationship. Absolutely no control would be somebody from The Guardian, for example, who wrote about me. I have no idea who they are. I have no contact with them. I don't have a relationship. And building up a relationship in order to ask them to change something about me on that page they have written would be quite a long process. So you want to look at it from that point of view. And that immediately says to me, the most important thing about a brand SERP is the control you have. If I can control everything on that brand SERP, I control the entire message. If I control or indirectly control everything, which is the case for my personal brand name, I control the message that's being shown, at least in the short term, with very little probability that any of it will flip and become negative or become something unhelpful. And also it protects me from bad press, because brand SERPs tend to be very stable. Once they've established, they don't move around very much. So if something new comes up that's perhaps negative or not as positive, it's less likely to rank than if I didn't have control. And if it does start to rank, I have control over page 2 as well. So I can start to think, right, okay, I can push something off page 2 onto page 1, which will get rid of whatever it is I don't like that came up. So that control over your brand SERP is phenomenally interesting and phenomenally important, and it's the basis of the entire work. And you want to approach your optimization. You start with the ones you control because it's easy. It's an easy win. Then you go on to the indirect ones. Then you go to the partially controlled ones. Then you go on to the indirect ones. And incredibly importantly in personal branding is the knowledge panel on the right-hand side. That's the panel that shows Google's knowledge. That's, as we were talking earlier, the computer, the Google encyclopedia for machines. The thing there is that it's machine curated. You cannot edit it. It's the machine that decides what it puts there. So you would imagine that you have no control at all, but that's actually not true. You can educate the machine. And I like to say educate. It's like a child. You need to teach it who you are, what you do, who your audience is. And if you do that, it will show the truth about you. It will show what you want. Because it has no reason to do anything else. It's trying to show fact. And if it's showing something that isn't true or is negative, it's because it's misunderstood. And it's up to you to go in and educate it. You can't educate it by saying, please change this. Because in fact, you can ask the Google employees to change things in your knowledge panel, some of the things in your knowledge panel. But if they change it and the machine decides that they are wrong, it will just switch it back. The machine is master. So you have to actually go in and figure out where the machine is finding the information, how the machine is corroborating that information, and then correct the machine by correcting the information that it is using as resources for drawing its conclusions and finding its facts. And that's the whole process. Once again, Kalicube.pro, I'm building the platform, almost finished, still in beta. And what I've done is found those sources, not on a general vein. Obviously it uses Wikipedia, and everybody says to me Wikipedia. I say, forget Wikipedia. We're not interested in Wikipedia. Very few people have the notability necessary to have a Wikipedia page. You won't get one. No point. Forget the pseudo wikis. You will get deleted by Google. Not from the pseudo wikis, because you pay them to be on there, but Google doesn't trust them. So if you use them, Google will just delete your knowledge panel entry anyway. You need to build it in an intelligent manner. Once again, explaining to this child machine who you are, what you do, and proving to it A plus B plus C plus D equals truth. And what I've done with Kalicube.pro is to identify the sources for each individual brand. 6 months ago, I had it for each industry, and I could tell you in this industry, it will tend to trust these sources. But now what I've managed to do is dig right down and say, for your brand or your personal brand, these are the sources you need to correct. These are the sources that Google is looking at. And it works absolutely
Nice.
wonderfully. It's very, very effective. It's really boring work because it means going around correcting information about yourself. So it's boring work, but it's very effective, and it's basically step by step proving to the machine what the truth is, what the facts are, and
Yes,
the
the
machine
facts.
will
Yeah.
always take the facts if you can present them correctly, like a child.
Yes. Yes, that is absolutely true. It's worth it, right?
Yeah, definitely worth it. I mean, I was talking
Yes.
to a client 6 months
Mm.
ago. He was represented by Google as a university teacher,
Mm.
university lecturer, and he said, well, I think I'm more of an author. I would rather be an author because I think I look better if I'm an author. He's a bit
Mm.
vain, maybe, but he said, I would like to switch what Google's saying. I would like it to say my name and then author instead of my name and university lecturer.
Mm.
And he came on board as a client, and it took us 6 months. So it's quite slow. It's a slow
Oh.
process. But 6 months later, Google now says his name, author. And he's very pleased.
Oh.
So we can change how the machine perceives us if we go about it in the
Hmm.
right way. And you can change
Yes.
pretty much everything. What you cannot do, if I might make this point, is lie.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult. I would say impossible. And I wouldn't waste my time even trying getting Google to believe a total fabrication. What you can
Yeah.
do is convince it that one piece of information about you is more important than another. So if you have one piece, like being an author, that you think is incredibly important, you can promote that one and demote the university lecturer so that Google pushes forward
Mm.
the idea of authorship rather than university lectureship. So you can't tell it that you were never a university lecturer because it knows you were, but you can convince it to present some other information to the user.
Oh, that's really interesting. I love it. Yes. Okay. So, what brand SERPs that we really should be tracking and improving as well?
Well, obviously your own. You should track your. If you're a company, you should track the company, the
Company.
products, the people, the C-level employees. Those
Okay.
are the three very important ones. But then you can also, interesting enough, that's the basics. Is saying who is the company, what products do we have, and who is responsible for these products. And then you can move on. You can say, who are the authors? Who are the people who write for this company? Who are the people who contribute content for the company? That's very good for SEO. That's very good for expertise, authority, and trust. If you know anything about SEO, EAT is very, very important. And Google's understanding of who we are and what we do is obviously very important for it to understand that we are expert, authoritative, and trustworthy within our field. Then you can push it further, and you can start tracking your competitors, or if it's a personal brand, the other people in your field, and you can see where they are appearing, how they're being presented. And you can get a really good idea of how you could potentially be presented. So what you could do is track all of your competitors or all of the people within
Okay.
your field and look at it and say, what are the best bits of each of these brand SERPs? Which ones do I want? And then work towards it, because you know that within your field, these elements on a brand SERP are possible and interesting and useful and valuable for Google's users. So you can potentially trigger them. For example, if you have a personal brand and you don't have video boxes on your brand SERP when somebody searches your name, but one of your colleagues does, it's a very easy step for you then to say, right, I just need to create this video strategy, because obviously within my industry, within my sphere, videos are potentially interesting for Google's users for this sphere of person or brand. Same with Twitter boxes. If one of your colleagues or somebody within your industry has got Twitter boxes on their brand SERP, I love Twitter boxes. I think they're really fun. That's when they show the 3 latest tweets directly on the SERP. If you search my name, you will probably see the 3 latest tweets at the top. That gives you enormous control over the brand SERP, and it's almost real time. It takes 17 seconds for that to update. If I tweet something now, in 17 seconds, it will show on my brand SERP. That's immediate direct control,
Oh.
which is really fun. Well, it's fun. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know how useful it is, but it's really good fun. And so if you see that on my brand SERP and you're in the digital marketing sphere, you know that you can potentially trigger those.
Mm.
So you want to track your company, the people within your company, your products, but then
Product.
also your competitors, other people who are similar to you, to
Yeah.
see what they've got that you could potentially have.
Mm. All right. Okay. Now I know. Okay. So I read on a blog post where you have been interviewed, where you said that a sexy brand SERP is the one that looks and feels great. So what makes a brand SERP sexy, and how are we going to make our brand SERP sexier?
Right. Well,
Hmm.
I use the term sexy because it speaks to people. It's like business card. Make your
Mm.
Google business card sexy.
Yes.
Sexy is probably not the correct term, but it does
Mm.
get people's attention, as we've
Yes.
just seen.
Mm.
But I mean, sexy is really simply accurate, positive, and
Mm.
convincing. I mean, and sexy just means that when your audience sees your brand SERP, they don't think, "Oh, that's really sexy." They think,
Mm.
"I'm convinced that
Yes.
this person or this brand is a credible and valuable solution or help to
Mm.
me in my life at some point." So it's accurate, positive, and convincing for the audience who are actually searching your brand name, who are either doing business with you or on the cusp of doing business with you, or in the case of personal brand, want to
Mm.
develop some kind of relationship with you.
Mm. Okay, now I know. I'm gonna make it sexy.
Brilliant.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So how are we going to track our brand SERP success?
Yeah. Well, with CaliCube, I mean, I've done that obviously. When I started doing it, I measured it by just looking at it and thinking that looks better to me. So it was very
Mm.
kind of like, yeah, about that. And
Mm.
obviously that's not something you can either present to your boss. And I also found that it was very demotivating
Mm.
because you don't necessarily feel the improvement. You don't necessarily see the improvement. The improvement is somewhere either very subtle or behind the scenes that you can't see. So what I developed with CaliCube was, or is in fact, a system for measuring both the quality and the control of the brand SERP. So obviously control is, as we said earlier, is phenomenally important. So we measure,
Mm.
have you got an A in control or a D? It goes from A, B, C, D. A means you really control them. You've got an awful lot of control. You've got, let's say, 80 to 90% control.
Mm.
Qualitatively, it's looking at the rich elements. Are there images on the page? Are there great reviews on the page or not? Is the sentiment of the text that Google is showing in the blue links and the descriptions underneath, is that a positive sentiment or a negative sentiment? So the quality
Mm.
is measured on this idea of sentiment, but also the colorfulness, the sexiness, if you like, of
Mm.
the images and the big boxes and the Twitter boxes, which are sexy.
Yes.
The video
Mm.
boxes, they're sexy. The knowledge
Mm.
panel, that's sexy. So quality is sexy score, let's say. And if you can measure both of those, then you can start to see the progress as you move forwards month by month. And then
Mm.
behind the scenes, we also measure what Google's Knowledge Graph API returns. Basically, Google has an insight into its knowledge graph where it will tell you what the knowledge graph contains. So we track
Mm.
that too. And we say to Google, do you understand what Jason Barnard means, what the term Jason Barnard means? And it sends
Mm.
me back a list of all the things that it knows about in its Google encyclopedia and its machine encyclopedia,
Mm.
all the things it knows about that are related to the term Jason Barnard, and also a score for the confidence it has in its understanding of that thing.
Mm.
So what we can then measure is how many different connections has the machine made with your entity, and
Mm.
what confidence does it have? And that confidence score obviously goes up as you work.
Mm.
For example, a typical person who gets into the knowledge graph would have a confidence score of 12. Then it
Mm.
would probably move up to 24. I mean, it goes up in steps depending on the type of entity. It's a long story, but I've got the data for this. My
Mm.
current score for my name is 824.
Mm.
If you looked up Marilyn Monroe, it would be 30,000. So
Oh.
it goes up and up and up and up and up. Marilyn Monroe is obviously very famous.
Mm.
So she has a very high score because Google has a great deal of confidence in how much it's understood about her and who she is, what she
Mm.
did. In
Mm.
me, it's got a score of 824, which is very respectable. But
Mm.
obviously it doesn't understand, or it isn't as confident as it is in Marilyn Monroe.
Mm.
But then if you take somebody like Andrea Volpini from WordLift, who's a partner, we've built an entity-based content model, which is part of this whole project. His score is, I think, 56 or 57. So it's understood who he is, obviously, very well, but it hasn't understood, or it isn't as confident it's understood as it is with me. So these basically measurements that are designed to demonstrate how you are moving forward with how Google is presenting you, how you are moving forward with how well Google understands you, and how well you are moving forward with Google's confidence it's understood you. And if you get those three scores, there are a couple of things, one of which is it's terribly satisfying when you see the scores go up.
Yes.
And it keeps you motivated. And it's also something you can report, if you have a boss, that you can report to your boss and say, we are moving forwards. Even if I can't prove the bottom line has improved, I can prove that we're moving forwards.
Wow. Wow, I have been blown away with a lot of insightful information about Brand SERPs. So thank you so much, Jason.
Wonderful.
I really enjoyed our talk today.
Me too. That was an absolute pleasure, Karen.
Yes.
I enjoyed talking about this, and today was particularly lovely.
Yeah. So guys, if you want to have a deeper dive into all things Brand SERP, so please follow and connect with Jason and all of his social media platforms. It's down in the descriptions below. So once again, Jason, thank you so much for this amazing interview. I really enjoyed it. And I look forward for more of our talks. I would like to know more.
That would be absolutely delightful. In a few months, when I've learned even more about Brand SERPs knowledge panels and how to control and influence them. And just, if you want to connect with me, in fact, search my name, Jason Barnard, and what comes up will be all about me.
Yes, that's what I did.
Brilliant.
It's all about Jason. That's so amazing. So thank you so much, Jason. And I'll see you around.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. That was delightful.
Yes, thank you.